Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Inevitable Podcast. I'm your host, Pedro Sorin, and today I have the honor of being here with my good friend, Michael Perry, someone whom I've had the pleasure of meeting, two professional chapters ago when I was still I continue to be in venture capital, but back when, Michael was building Kit. And for those who don't know, Michael, first and foremost, is the father of two sons, Leander and Solomon, but also is the CEO of Maple, family tech startup that's looking to basically help families run better and, actually free up time for parents so they do the things that matter with their kids. Hopefully that, is a good way of putting it, but, correct me, please. And then
you did beautiful. You nailed it.
Okay, great. And before launching Maple, Michael was also the founder of Kit. It's a virtual marketing assistant for small business owners. He sold this company to Shopify, ended up being the leader for Shopify in the US. I think back when, was Shopify Private when that happened?
No, they were 1 year after their IPO, they acquired Kit.
Okay, probably it was like $45 a share or something like that. No. It's
significantly less.
Significantly less than the, I don't know, 1,100, 1,200 that it is probably right now. But Michael's also an angel investor, loves, helping and supporting small businesses, and considers himself to be a bit of a survivalist. I'm actually interested in learning what that means. But anyway, welcome to the Inevitable Podcast, Michael. It's a pleasure to have you here.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you so much for having me, and happy we've been able to stay connected all these years.
My pleasure. The feeling is mutual. So yeah, let's start with this. What does it mean to be a bit of a survivalist? What is that?
Well, I think that entrepreneurship is so incredibly hard. I think people grossly underestimate how difficult it is. My grandfather was an entrepreneur. He moved to Hawaii in the 60s, opening up one of the first carpet businesses. And he talked to me in my early years of life that you somewhat have to be a bit of a cockroach to make it in business. And a cockroach, of course, notoriously is the only thing that could survive a nuclear blast. And so when I look at the track record of my life, I grew up in a very tiny town here in the Bay Area, came from very humble beginnings, grew up standing on a car lot, didn't finish college. I just find that I have been able to survive some very challenging circumstances and feel that with a high vote of confidence, I can survive. I can make it on my own with or without help, regardless of how hard the climb is. And I think when I probably first started saying that, it was coming from a bit of frustration and arrogance and understanding of just so badly how I wanted to make it in life and that I would do whatever it takes to make it in life. And I think that I think you're a survivalist. I think there's a lot of people out there who just fight for their dreams tooth and nail, no matter what's thrown at them.
Yeah, no, definitely a survivalist. Let's just use a different word that it's inevitable, but basically it's it's this ability, I guess, of having a combination of self-reliance and just not giving up, right? So that's
exactly right.
Makes sense. So you mentioned your first professional experience, right? Started when you were 7, working with your uncle.
Yeah.
How was this experience? He had a video store, is that right?
Yeah, I grew up in a town called Alameda. My uncle ran a video rental store called Video Maniacs, right off of Park Street, the main drag in Alameda. I probably should ask my parents at some point how it all came to be or why they had me working there on the weekends. But for whatever reason, at 7, my parents sent me to work there on Saturdays and Sundays. And I did things from rewinding videotapes to restocking the shelves to, like many video stores back in the day, like the Blockbusters of the world. He sold candy and popcorn and all that kind of stuff, and restocking that to checking people out. And it was just such an eye-opening experience at 7. I think that one thing that's been kind of unique when I reflect back on life is that there's always been this desire to work and to learn and to make my own money, as far back as I can remember. And maybe that's why my parents put me in that environment to continue to nurture that desire, that entrepreneurial spirit. But I worked for my uncle for a long period of time, from his video store to a jewelry store in my teenage years, and I credit him a lot for teaching me a lot about entrepreneurship and running your own business.
Do you remember what you did with the first time that you made money?
Yes.
What did you buy, or what did you do with the money? I guess.
I mean, when I was working for my uncle, he was paying me $3 an hour. So I didn't really make any money there. The real time I started to really make money, I was 10, and the little community I grew up in this like little housing community out in Bay Farm, which is like the poor person's island off of Alameda. My friend and I took some skateboards and hammered them together and built a cart, and we went door to door with a bucket and a towel and soap, and we washed people's cars for $10 a car. And we did that all summer long, 7 days a week. And I remember riding my bike around the island with, $1,000 in my pocket, just thinking I was like the fucking hustler of the year, right? Just thought I was the coolest kid. But my parents took me into San Francisco. There used to be a Toys R Us in San Francisco, out near Japantown off of Fillmore. And I remember buying a remote control car and a bunch of toys with that money, and just feeling so prideful that the things that my parents would not buy me, I was able to buy myself. And I think it was like in that moment that I understood financial freedom, of like what it was like to be in control of your money. And I've been basically just at it ever since. I think that was like that summer at 10, in my mind, when I look back in life, that was like such a benchmark moment, because I was making like real money, a couple $100 a day kind of money. And I just haven't turned back.
Yeah, I think that people underestimate they say, right, that you feel far happier when you solve the money problem versus, if you keep just scaling it up to a nicer car or a nicer house. At least for me, I consider myself a retired workaholic, I would say. But there was a big difference between, understanding what it's like to not have money to buy a full, Subway sandwich and cutting it in half to eat a portion in lunch and a portion at dinner, or skipping a meal, and exchanging it for some whey protein so you can save a few bucks here and there, versus playing life on the offense and self-actualizing. And I think that before you really figure out who you are, what you want to do, you have to solve the money problem. This is not an argument for UBI. I think that that's a disaster, in my opinion. I mean, I don't know what is your opinion there, but solving the money problem is by far the most important thing that I think one should be able to do before you figure out what you want to do.
Yeah, it's so hard to say. I think that I've been a poor man and I've been a rich man. I certainly think life is easier poor in some cases, easier rich in some cases, complex in some cases when you're rich, complex in some cases when you're poor. There's no perfect formula. Certainly, I don't miss wondering how I'm going to eat lunch. I certainly don't miss wondering how I'm going to eat dinner. I certainly don't miss not being able to afford a cup of coffee. I mean, I've been there, right? I've lived on food stamps at different parts of my entrepreneurial journey. My sister used to work at Lyft, and she'd get free lunches, and she'd bring home her leftover lunches, and my wife would split her leftover lunch for dinner when I was building Kit. I don't miss any of that shit at all whatsoever. But I've also been, some of my happiest moments have been when I've had nothing. I remember having, after selling Kit, more money than I probably to some degree ever imagined I would have, and being absolutely miserable. So it just depends on what sets you up for personal success and happiness. I know people who have nothing, who surf every single day and live out of a truck, and they're the fucking happiest people I know. And I know billionaires who are miserable. So it's hard to say. Everyone speaks their own love language when it comes to happiness, but certainly, wondering how you're going to get your next meal is a stressful situation to be in. Absolutely.
I think that's a beautiful way of putting it, which ultimately I would say that there's also a path. I think that whenever you do solve the money problem, because there is this aggressiveness of, either you make yourself a victim, or I think you get really angry and you're like, I'm going to fix this, right? At least a step by. And then I see it when you get to that point where you do make some of the money, then either people will get super materialistic, or they open up a spiritual path, understanding that peace can only come from within, because nothing material. There's a base level of comfort, and that's pretty much it, right? Like not needing much, and managing your own energies is very important.
Yes, the most, maybe.
Yeah. Do you do anything in order to keep yourself grounded, with to find your own peace, basically?
When I was selling cars, I was young and I was making, like, let's say $15,000, $12,000 a month, and I was trying to buy happy. I was miserable. I was unhappy. I would try to buy things to make myself happy. So I think that there's some life learnings that have put things in perspective, that even if the money grows, you've learned that you can make life easier, but you can't buy peace. You know what I mean? I was miserable in those moments. In terms of keeping myself grounded today, I think I have people who constantly remind me of, like, where I've come from. I lived a simple life for a long period of time. I think that I have an internal struggle, if we're being, like, super transparent in this podcast, of, like, I do like Rolexes, and I do like my cars, and I do like my homes, and I do like that shit. It's like a real actual problem. And I don't know if it's necessarily, like, the materialism of itself, or, like, what I just grew up on a car lot, and I love Porsche, and I love watches and all that. But I also recognize that, like, that's not going to bring me, like, the genuine peace and happiness that, like, my sons bring me. Like, there's no replacing the satisfaction that love has filled in my life that was missing for a very long time. And I do thank my wife and my mother and the people around me of constantly reminding me that working to acquire more things versus working to acquire more purpose are two very different paths. Right? And I think I'm right now walking the path of, I'm trying to be more purposeful of how I'm applying my wealth and my time, versus trying to acquire more objects or things simply because of ego and everything else.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I mean, at least that's one of the things I observe deeply in you, and makes me respect you even further. Although, we should also, there is an Epicurean aspect of life that toys are fun and we should enjoy them. There's no shame in that.
That's right. That's right. It's like, I think that I'm trying to find the delicate balance of wanting to, like, further my purpose as a human, but also enjoy the labor of my work. I think that that's a really challenging thing to do, to find the balance for that for a lot of people. Or maybe, that's just something that at this stage of my life that I'm needing to work on. But it's fucking hard, man.
Yeah.
It really is. When you grow up with nothing and then all of a sudden you have some money, it's hard to kind of not want to overly indulge sometimes.
Well, but you should enjoy. My view is that, having partnered with so many founders that come in, from a similar situation, and I, I didn't grow up poor. We were just regular middle class Brazil. So I think you actually went through deeper struggles in that sense, for sure, based on what you're sharing here. But there is the moment when you do realize that you're a part of this other cluster, that it isn't that cluster, right? So I think when you do have the choices, it's funny how it all felt so silly, but you kind of had to get there, right? And then you have the ability of, okay, how do I find perfect joy? And I appreciate nice things 100%, and having different, more exotic hobbies or so and so forth, but frankly, the moments in which I have the most joy are things that you really can't put a price on. I think that that base level of happiness just gives you courage to be extremely ambitious and unafraid of failure at all levels. So, that it's probably, I would say that a lot of investors, even if it's subconsciously, know that that's where your mind's at in this chapter with Maple versus Kit, and that's why they were so, that's why it was easier, probably.
I mean, well, two things, just to close the loop on one thing. I think that right now at this stage of life, my biggest concern is fucking up my kids, 100%. I want to have good, simple humans, and I don't want to have spoiled brats. And so I think still, when I make decisions, I'm like, how's this going to affect my children when I'm buying cars and stuff like that? And the second piece, as it relates to Maple, is like, I'm deeply afraid of failure still. Like I am deeply, deeply, deeply afraid to fail. And I think that I have the freedom of knowing that, yeah, I can work without a paycheck. I can go all in. I can have the tenacity. I can push. I can make different decision frameworks because the personal financial ramifications may be less severe to me, but like I still carry the weight to do the right thing for my team, for my investors, for my family, for the problem I'm trying to solve, for the industry I'm trying to create, for the economy I'm trying to establish, for the ecosystem we're trying to build. There's not a single night that I haven't gone to bed since I started Maple. Actually, there hasn't been a single night I've gone to bed whenever I'm a servant to the people I build for. At Shopify, I felt the same way, where I don't think about the families who are using Maple on my mind, and I don't want to fail them. They need what we're doing. So I appreciate you think I'm some heroic founder and courageous founder, but I'm like everybody else, not wanting to find out that I can't do it. I'm all in trying to make sure that I am able to do it.
Absolutely. No, but you are also, and and even if I don't think it will be the case, but even if it is, I have all the confidence that I know that, like, in the arena, you have given your best, because it's just so wired in your personality.
Oh,
right? So it's just, and when we use the word hero, I love it, because the entire pre-production preparation that we sent you over email, it's actually based on Joseph Campbell's, hero's journey. So I certainly have this belief that all, inevitable founders or survivalists basically are, heroes of their own journey, right? Like, it's just like you have this entire quest. But you do think that even harder than being an early stage CEO and taking this risk and responsibility, probably the hardest thing is actually being a father, and that's the most important job that you've ever had. How is that difference between, Michael, the founder, before and after paternity?
Oh, fuck. Okay, well, I remember walking down the street with somebody on Sansom in San Francisco, and they were a founder and an entrepreneur. And at that time, I was struggling to eat every day building Kit. That was in the food stamp days of my life. And I said, what's harder, building a business or raising a family? And they said, oh, unequivocally raising a family. And in that moment, I knew he just wasn't working hard enough on his business. And he was 100% right. I think there's a reality that one thing at Shopify that I learned is that they would always say, here you're doing your life's work. Here is where you do your life's work. And I think part of my own problem when I was at Shopify as an employee was that I actually did not feel that I was doing my life's work. My children are my life's work. My children are the reflection of my actual effort on this planet. Are they good people? Am I setting them up to succeed? Are they going to be, humans that have the willingness to find happiness? Are they going to be on their own journey of self-exploration? Like, how they carry themselves in life, to some degree, is going to be heavily weighed on how I invest in their outcome and how I show up for them as a father 24/7. Your employees will come and go. Your children are always there. Your company may sell. Your children are always there. Your company may fail. Your children are always there. And so I think that there's just this reality that I am willing to fuck up every single thing in my life. I'm doing everything I can to be all in and ever present for my kids. As a matter of fact, I just had this conversation with somebody where I'm like, I want to get rid of my iPhone again, iPhone mini, and only have Maple and a few apps on there because I just want to give my kids my undivided attention. There's very few things in life that I feel that strongly about. As a founder in a post-child world, I think that the reality is that before kids, my life was very much, I think, disconnected from like what I like to do personally, what I like to do professionally, how I like to spend time. Now my life is centered all around family. My kids are the highest priority in my life. I sign off at 5 o'clock to make sure that I don't miss dinner with my kids. If that means I have to work at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night to continue to show up for my team, that's the trade-off I'm willing to make, but I'm not going to miss bath time with my son. Versus in a pre-child world, like I would be gone for a week from my house and it would be like, that's just what it is. No big deal. I'd go speak at conference. Everything is just valued in way differently now. And everything in my life right now is about being the best family member I can possibly be.
That's incredible. And yeah, I think that, when in our deathbeds, we're not really going to care about the market caps or exit sizes or number of unicorns. It will ultimately be just a pure love question of like, hey, was I managed to love, and was I loved back, and, did I help, right? Like a bunch of different people. And at least that's how I feel, but it took me making a little bit of money to get there.
I 100% believe that when I'm on my deathbed, I will not be thinking about Maple. And I will not be thinking about the house in Santa Barbara I built, and I won't be thinking about the cars I bought, and I won't be thinking about Shopify or Kit or the investments I made. I'm going to be like thinking about how much I'm going to miss my kids and how much I'm going to miss my wife, and that they're this true, they are the true currency. They are the true wealth of my life. I was on a plane just yesterday flying back from Santa Barbara, and I was reflecting on my life a little bit, just feeling just like the highest level of privilege that I have. And I would give anything to have every single minute back with my wife. Every minute where I didn't show up in the right way, any minute that I was not the best husband possible, any minute that I wasn't the best father possible. Like my regret on sometimes putting my business and others before my family over the last 15 years is like just crazy high. My wealth is 100% based on the time with my kids. It's just crazy, man. Like, I just feel like I'm in a place of life where I just am finally getting it at 35. What matters.
That's great. That's beautiful, though. And I think that when you think about sacrifices that our parents have made for us, right, to the degree of what's the sacrifices that you're, willing to make, like you've mentioned this preoccupation of not raising spoiled brats. It's something that I care deeply as well. Having interacted with many spoiled brats myself, just through the nature of the business of venture capital, and it is fascinating to see when you're dealing with LP money that is at the same level. It doesn't matter. Maybe families are worth like 100. A billion, 2 billion, but the difference in character and education of some of these folks will take their money either way. There's a limit, of course, in terms of principles, but there's a notable difference between who had parents that were, having the determination to be at bath time at 5 p.m. or 5:30, versus the ones that were like outsourcing that to the nannies and, so.
Never. I mean, my parents, my mom had me at 22. My dad had me at 25. My mom was a waitress. My dad was a car salesman. They fucking worked their asses off. I watched my father go to work with holes in his clothes and holes in his shoes, and my mother coming in at night and putting coins in my piggy bank. And they just gave it, like, they sacrificed at the highest level to put me in this chair, right? I would not be where I'm at today without the sacrifice of my parents. And I owe them every single thing that I have. What I owe to my children is the investment to keep them honest and real and humble and gracious about the privileged life that they live. We collectively as a family, when I was growing up, we didn't have much. My children will have everything, so to speak, at their disposal. And so I just think that it's just so important to raise good humans in this world today, and to understand and have the awareness of how fortunate that we are or they are. Nobody on earth wants to. I'm convinced, and I don't know why people aren't more empathetic about this. No one wants to be poor. Talk to poor people. No one fucking wants to be poor, right? No one wants to be discriminated against. No one wants to be hated because of the color of their skin. No one wants to be hated because of who they choose to love. No one wants to be discounted for. And so when you're on the exact polar opposite of those things, and the system is set up for you, my sons are white, my sons are going to be, obviously to some degree coming from a place of privilege and wealth, then they have to equally understand how fortunate and lucky that they are, and to do the right thing for the people who need them to show up in the most meaningful way, and to help those other pockets of the world and those other groups that are being discounted for, like their grandparents were discounted. My parents were discounted as uneducated people, and treated like shit. And I'm just not going to have my boys act like that or be like that. Like, not at all. I would walk away from everything I have if I feel like it's having a negative impact on my children.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder, one concern I have, and I'm still a few years away from being a parent for sure. But it's more in terms of when you think about the education, right? The whole conversation about homeschooling versus actually taking them to school, and because in the end, the motivation that we have, because we understand what success looks like and competence. So you want to raise competent humans that are also nice people, and that's I guess the correct combination, right? And and I recall some of the moments where you felt pain, right, when you were growing up in school, and they built character, but at the same time, I am shocked with some of the things I see teachers putting out there as well, and protecting the creation of a competent person based upon the values that you think are ideal is a sacrosanct thing, in my opinion, for, as a parent. So when you start doing the math of like, oh my God, I actually won't spend that much time with my kid when I have kids, or, it's a limited amount of time because, they also have to go through their own journey. So how do you balance that out in terms of making sure that you're not overprotecting, but you're also not outsourcing things, and this goes to everything. I've had friends that have 9-year-old kids now that have a conversation about oh, I don't know what my gender is, and they're 9, they're not even in puberty, and that is kind of like, how do you deal with that?
I think that these conversations are super delicate and super hard, and in some cases I haven't crossed the path yet of having to have a gender conversation with my children yet, because they're 4 weeks old yesterday and 2 years old. Of course. So I would obviously seek some outside counsel myself if, with industry experts that or people as a whole that have crossed those paths. But I think that, school is interesting. My parents did their best to send me to the best schools imaginable because they wanted to provide me with an education. But I think that so much about schools just developing the social skills, and to your extent, like the tenacity and grit of just like dealing with other people at a young age and learning to manage other people at a young age and building kind of like that character at a young age that school provides. I don't believe that outsourcing learning entirely is actually, I don't think it's fun. Like, I want to go travel with my kids and teach them about other cultures, and I want to sit down and read history books with my kids, and I am someone that is relatively gifted at math. I want to sit down and work with my kids and help them understand how math works. I'm a self-taught engineer. I want to sit down and, talk to my kids about frameworks and systems and like what it's like to write an application and teach them computer science. Like, I want to be involved in my kid's life. And I know that, again, that comes from a place of privilege in itself. There's a lot of parents who have to work 2 jobs or 3 jobs, and they don't have the luxury of getting to do that. My parents were people that did not have the luxury of getting to sit down and teach me things in that capacity because they were working their asses off to try to provide me the best life possible. And so it's just really about how your family is set up and how you can show up for your kids in the best way possible. If the best way you can show up for your kids is, to send them to school and all the learning is happening there and you're doing your best to put food on the table, then I applaud you. And I hope that you're able to feel good about your efforts. And if you have the bandwidth and the ability to sit down and teach your kids piano because you know how to play piano, that's fucking awesome too. There's no silver bullet to this because each child is so unique with unique needs, and each home has a different set of needs and availability to kind of determine how involved they can be in certain pockets. But yeah, those conversations that are more common today than they were 20 years ago regarding gender and things like that, we'll cross those bridges as we get there and try to help our children navigate life as best as possible. Because I think at the end of the day, that's all a parent can do is help their kids navigate life.
Absolutely. with competence. And I would say that the unconditional parental love goes a long way for, forming this mental ability to not give up. That's probably the number one thing that you can do as a parent, right? And do you have any habits?
I agree.
Oh, awesome.
I know, I was going to say, I agree. Like, I think just teaching your kids to lean all the way into whatever makes them happy and to not give up is, one of the most important things a parent can do for their children.
And your venture into tech, because how heavily were you influenced by just growing up in the Bay Area? Was that something that you've always felt like, hey, this is really what I want to do, and start coding? When was that moment where you realized that this is something I like doing and I can be better than others if I put myself, if I actually train really hard?
Well, I mean, I remember when my parents brought our first computer home. We had one family computer. It was a Macintosh. And my parents jokingly say that they put it on a credit card and they spent 7 years paying off that computer. That computer has probably generated the highest ROI of any investment that they ever made. I think that growing up in the Bay Area and, Apple being on the news constantly, and like, I had friends who were early, our neighbors' kids were early employees at Yahoo or early employees at Google. And like, it's just like, I think that being that this is the industry, the bread and butter industry of where I grew up, I was always kind of like enamored by it. But I always thought I was going to own car dealerships. I thought I was going to follow in my father's footsteps, sell cars, which I did. And that my dream someday was to like be the kid who like rose up and like owned a bunch of car dealerships and was going to treat car salesmen with the respect that I believe they deserve to be treated with, versus treating them like shit that most owners treat them as. And when I was a teenager, I started getting into software, and in my early 20s, I started getting into software. And it was around 20, actually 21, where I just decided that for fun, I'd like to start building websites because it was just like it kept pulling at me, it kept calling me, and it was just a hobby. It was just fun. It was just like, I never thought like this was going to be a career. And I just fell so deeply in love with it that I remember I was selling Kevin Rose a car, an Audi A3. And I remember him putting down how much money he made on his credit application.
The Dig founder you're talking about.
Yeah, the Dig founder, yeah. And I was like, holy shit, people can make money doing this. It was just like this weird moment where I knew of Dig, I knew of him, I sold him a car. I hadn't seen anyone else's credit application in the software world before. And I was like, I think I can try to make a career out of this. Like, this is what I love to do, and people are making money out of it. And so I started building companies. And I think it was around the Kit time period that I realized I was uniquely, I don't think special is the right word. I'm not uniquely special, but it was the right, like, I was destined to do it. Like, it was meant for me. Like, it was like my skill sets and what I was good at lined up very well with being a founder entrepreneur.
That's great. I think that there's deep comfort, I think, when you have that realization that even though, there are those days where it feels like you're chewing glass for breakfast, and as you taste your own blood, you have to smile.
Yeah.
Those, and then
that's most days.
Most days. And I will tell you that, at least for me, I have always been a very entrepreneurial, even when I was an employee, I would always have my own little thing within the company and so forth. Like, then when it's very painful, I think to myself, I was like, but would I rather be doing anything else? It's like, I can't imagine, right? Like, no. So, yeah.
It's the most beautiful, ugly, disgusting, gorgeous, great, terrible, high, low. It's the most amazing life. It's like, there's days where I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, I don't even financially have to work. And then there's days where I'm like, I do it for free because there's nothing else in life I'd rather be doing.
Exactly. Yeah, but that's when you're 100% on the right path. For me, when I left one VC, I was offered many GP level positions in multiple firms, and it would have been a very easy transition. You have carry, you're making 300, 400K a year, versus doing what we're building with Atman, and I couldn't do it. I was like, I'm not gonna get a job that is kind of like the worst possible outcome. You know, I need to be on a mission. It's very different.
It's really hard to do something. It's very easy to go to work every day when you genuinely love. You may not be happy every single day because it's so hard. You may be like, holy shit, some days because it's so hard. But you generally don't question that you should be doing it. Like, you just love it. You're just like, there's no other life for me. I've often said that the greatest gift outside of my children, and definitely I said this before my children, was that at 20 I figured out who I wanted to be in terms of professionally. And I've been able to, for the last 15 years, work really hard at being that person that I see in my eye. And I feel lucky about that.
That's awesome. Do you have any habits in terms of just, you know, exercise routine, journaling, meditation? Like, how do you take care of you so you can take care of others?
I think the last month has been pretty terrible in terms of taking care of myself. I had a baby 4 weeks ago.
Congrats,
my wife had a C-section. Thank you so much. So, like, I think if we take the last month, there's been no routine. It's been survival. It's like you're, for the first time, playing zone defense. You got 2 kids. I launched a company. I've also done 2 angel investments in the last month. Like, I got to construct. Like, this last month has been probably the hardest of my life in terms of lack of self-care. I would say prior to that, I definitely meditated every single day because I'm someone who suffers from like extreme anxiety, and I found it over the last decade to be really helpful to just take a second to myself and to be purposeful and to be mindful and to recognize that all of this is so fleeting. The stress is fleeting. The moment on earth is fleeting. My time with my kids is fleeting. And to just like regain consciousness about how important today actually is. I think people take time for granted, and meditation for me and centering myself allows me to respect the clock. That's probably been my most consistent behavior. At different times of my life, I've had different things that I've needed to invest in for self-care, whether that's fitness, boxing, surfing, walking. I bet meditation and starting my day with like a moment of silence, a lot of journaling throughout my life. I'm a big journaler, whether that's working on notes or I actually am wanting to work on, which this is a bit breaking news, but at some point I want to put out a business book, but it's a business book of poetry. It's poems that I've been writing over the last 15 years of like the emotional struggles that I've been documenting as being an entrepreneur.
That's great. I have a bunch of poetry on my website as well, but it's business poetry too.
Maybe we'll collab on it. Maybe it'll be a collab. And but meditation, I think it's just been like my go-to for the last 15 years.
As someone that also has had and continues to have, just to find ways to control it and manage it, this severe anxiety, most likely just because of this, you are, it's like it's self-inflicted in many ways.
Yes.
I found something that I think has been amazing, and it's new. It's been only for the last 3 weeks or so, which is that, have you heard of that guy, the Wim Hof? Mm-hmm. No, it's the Iceman, basically. This guy has 26 Guinness World Records. He basically went all the way to the top of the Everest barefoot. Also ran an entire full marathon with no water on the Namibian desert. And all through breath work. He basically...
breath work.
Yeah, so he was poor, and his wife killed herself and left him with 4 children. This was like 40 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And then, so it's a combination of breath work with ice baths.
Yeah. So I have not heard the ice bath part, but I have some friends who have evolved past meditation into breath work. And it might be something I explore. I've heard crazy good things about breath work.
It's insane. For me, it has put me in this entire different journey with because first and foremost, when you learn the techniques and you understand what it's like, it works instantly. You don't have to do any drugs, either prescribed or non-prescribed. And you found this beautiful calmness through your own system. And when you understand how the hormonal, flow of your body works, and you manage to properly manipulate that through breath, is incredible. And just being on ice for a few minutes, it also it makes you come back so alive. So there's this whole thing here called Miami Ice Club, and we literally.
Oh, here we go. Here we go. I knew there had to be some Miami aspect to this. I knew there had to be some Miami aspect to this conversation coming at some point.
Of course, always. But I will tell you that going there has been transformational, and who I see there, either some really badass, ginormous like CrossFit people, or founders and VCs. And it's literally like twice a week, 7:30 a.m. in the morning, and then Fridays it's like a little happy hour. So it's a community, and
that's cool.
It's interesting, you all go there, we all brief together, and then jump on ice, and it's very efficient. Though whenever you're in Miami. Or we can even do it in.
No, I'll come to Miami. That sounds like a Miami. I want to do that in Miami. I think, Pedro, to be honest with you, I think just stepping away from technology and devices for a while does wonders for people. I think that we're so connected that we're not able to listen to the wind. And whether you're sitting there doing a breathing exercise on ice, or you're meditating, or you're surfing, just taking a second to just be connected to the earth is the solution. And I just think when I'm feeling the most stressed out or the most anxiety ridden, just going for a walk without my phone and just being I am so fucking lucky to be alive and healthy and to have a chance. Having a chance, we talked, you obviously saw me struggling with the kit era. But to have a chance to get to do this again is just crazy. I never thought I was going to have another company. And I think people just don't recognize how much of a privilege it is to have a chance.
That's beautiful.
Makes everything feel so easy.
Yeah. At least, the glass tastes better.
The glass tastes a lot better.
So what's your full vision for Maple? And for those that don't know, if you want to explain basically what is Maple, what's the company, what are you guys working on?
Yeah. So Maple, we believe we are the very first family technology platform as a software company. And right now what we've recognized is that many households fall under this 80-20 principle, which one person is doing 80% of the work and 80% of the household is benefiting from that one person. And what we've built is this very amazing way for families to come together, to have awareness about everything that needs to be done, to work together, and to get things accomplished either manually or through some of our integrations that we've built directly into the product. I think the long-term vision is there's a commonality amongst people, regardless of their age, regardless of their gender, regardless of the color of their skin, or the amount of money in the bank. Everyone wants what's absolutely best for their kids. Everyone wants to give their kids the best life possible. And so much of that is just being present and being there and participating in your child's life. I think most kids just want more time with their kids. And so if we can build the automations, not 100%, you're never going to have 100% automation, but if we can kind of build the self-driving car for running your house, and we can give as much time back to parents over the next decade as possible to spend with their kids, then we believe that we've uniquely built the home operating system that every family is going to kind of gravitate and center around. And, putting your household and removing the question marks to put life on autopilot, I think will be one of the most important things I accomplish as an entrepreneur that no one has been able to successfully do just yet. Because at the end of the day, it is the only company, in my opinion, that's truly serving our human purpose, which is helping take care of the kids, helping take care of the next generation. So
I think, well, first and foremost, that's incredible, and it's what makes you such an incredible missionary founder. And there have been, right, a few applications that were family trackers, None of these companies,
Yes.
I have one of them with, my folks in Brazil, Life 360, but like none of them became massive businesses. They were just very good companies, but, they didn't explode. Then you have also folks that start solving the wallet problem with kids. There's that moment where the child will have a device, that device will have money associated with it, needs parental control. So when you talk about being the database of record for families, right, like that control system, how do you see the evolution of that over time as the kid grows, or the kids, will grow? Because it can start maybe, I don't want to oversimplify it, but you can start with a shared activity board, to-do list, but then what's the progress from there? And there's always a first, right, for the kids. The first time that you can commute by yourself, that you can have money and so forth.
So I think there's a couple things. One is, I think that how everyone has been approaching this so far, like the tracking apps or the previous task management apps or the wallet apps of these natures of like distributing allowance. The reality is that in a lot of cases, these are really rich features to what would be a platform, right? And I think what makes Maple uniquely special is that as we better understand the dynamics of the family, i.e. where they live, the size of their household, who's responsible for what time of day they conjugate, so on and so forth, we can actually, now that we know what they're talking about, what they're responsible for, and the events that they have on dock, we can actually externalize APIs to allow for a lot of these applications that you just talked about to actually just live directly on our platform. So one of the biggest opportunities that no one's talking about that I think Maple, hopefully by the end of 2022, is going to really be the champion of a year from now, is just consolidating this very, 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 very fragmented space. And that's why I say that we're the first family tech platform where a lot of it can live directly and be managed directly inside of Maple. Part of the challenge with any job, parenting or your 9-to-5 job, is that there is a general amount of fatigue, a general amount of feeling overwhelmed at the fucking body of shit that we're trying to maintain and control, right? Even with your 9-to-5 job, I'm like, I got Slack, I got Google, it's just too much. And so I just like, where's my consolidated space? And so Maple doing that, I think, is going to be unique. Now, when we talk about the many horizons, while I was at Shopify, I built one of the most important marketing recommendation engines over a 4-year period that I am a patent holder on as an innovator. And I think that using machine learning in large data sets that no one has just yet, that Maple has a unique opportunity to do, can actually coach them along the way. One of the big things that we're going to be working on in the coming months that's going to be rolling out in small snippets is like actually this Maple being like this home assistant inside of these conversations to guide families based on these data sets on how we can recommend for their household to operate more smoothly. And that may even come down to like, your child is now old enough to start receiving a loan, or your child is old enough to start doing some of these chores, or your child is old enough to start riding a bike, or your child is old. So many people are looking at Google for the answers on how to raise their family. I think Maple has a unique opportunity to be that guiding light.
Great. What about also balancing the workload between both parents, right? To, touch on the campaign. It's 50-50, not 1950s.
Yeah.
For those that don't have that context, that's the the launch campaign for the application.
Yeah. Our launch campaign was, it's not 1950, it's 50-50. And the problem is that in 1950, 1 in 10 children had both parents in the workforce. Today's world, it's 2 out of 3 children have both parents in the workforce. And sadly, on the trend line of life, at some point, it's going to be closer to 3 out of 3 children, right? Have both, or 3 out of 4 children, or 8 out of 10 children have both parents in the workforce. And so what we're seeing is that now mom and dad, respectfully, are both going to work, both trying to be breadwinners, but then mom is coming home and mom is figuring out dinner, mom's figuring out the groceries, mom's figuring out where the kids should be going to school, mom is figuring, it's all about mom making decisions and running the household. And so part of us being able to really actually improve the quality of life of families is starting with making sure that we go from having this 80-20 split into a more equalized ratio of work inside of the household. And Maple, I think, plays a very unique role in terms of that guiding light of saying, hey, did you know Alex is doing 5 more things than you're doing today? Do you want to take some of that off of her plate? Or your family has worked together for 37 minutes last week, which was 10% more than last week. Good job, keep it up. And I think having like this house manager, this house coach in Maple which again, I'm hoping to have more of this exposed by the end of the year, is going to be a humongous step forward in terms of like how families can kind of conjugate and work together as effectively as possible.
Awesome. Yeah, even with simple prompt questions as well, right? Just to make sure that that harmony is there. At least all my friends that are recent parents, just such as yourself now, I know it's the second time, certainly different, but they're all, there's a couple balance as well, right? In terms of, chores and so forth, and just,
that's it.
It's awesome. Well, really appreciate your time. I know we're approaching a little bit of the top of the hour here, so I want to be mindful of that. And basically, there are always a few last questions we like to ask here. And one of them is there anything that you started doing recently that has significantly improved your life? Something small, simple, something maybe something you buy, a new habit, or.
Ooh, what is one thing that I've started doing recently that has significantly improved my life? Well, there's a stupid answer. I bought a new coffee machine, and given the lack of sleep right now, that is coming to significant play. It requires very little effort and gives me a cup of coffee. But I think the one thing that has been the greatest.
Not stupid. It's a good answer. We've gotten
it's a good answer, but
one that we've gotten that I thought was awesome. I bought one for myself. Was a Bluetooth speaker for your shower.
Oh, that's amazing. That's a good one. Honestly, the most important thing that I've done is just like, honestly, this sounds so stupid, but I've scheduled in Maple a reminder to take time to just feel grateful. And I just like sit down for 10 or 15 minutes every day and say like, why is my life so good? Because I think it's easier to say like, this shit is super hard. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I'm trying to run a company. But just taking a second to count my blessings and to just feel thankful for my life and thankful for the chance to live this life. I try to do that every single day, and having the mindfulness to do that every day. And that has had such a positive impact on my mental health.
That's awesome. Oh, that's great. Is there something that you think it's true that others don't? It's like the classic Peter Thiel question.
Something that I think is true that others don't. Oh, that's a controversial one. I'm like a little bit nervous to even say it because I feel like it's like we're in such a place where there's going to be so much judgment around this potential answer. I think that most of technology fucking sucks.
That's great. That's a perfect.
I think
that's a perfectly fine answer.
To give context, I think that the smartest people in the world. So I'm someone who's like, I'm a bit of an arrogant purist to the extent that I think technology is at its absolute best when it's giving us more time. I'm all about giving people time. I was with Kit, as you know. I am with Maple, and I think I have to give context to this because it could come off the right way. We have some of the smartest fucking people in the world trying to make a shark swim around a cereal bowl. And we have some of the smartest people in the world, minting NFTs. And we have some of the smartest people in the world. Like, I just think, like, what would it be like if we took all of these people who are just, like, at this highest level of intelligence, the highest level of capability, and we just started solving, like, these crazy, very real problems? And I don't know. I think too many people are making decisions on like what's going to be the best financial return for them versus what has the highest leverage of impact on society. And so I really struggle with how people spend time.
Yeah. Well, to agree and, even dial up what you're talking about. I think that this whole billionaire space race is dumb as fuck. While people still,
dumb as fuck.
Like just they suffer. It's ridiculous, right? And then literally, like as someone that deeply respects Jeff Bezos, to see him on that press conference say thank you for all our Prime customers so I can fly my penis-shaped rocket
to space.
And then competing against who gets to do it first between him versus Richard Branson on the date and the PR. It's just such a poor, it's just like it is I think God probably looks at that and says, wow, you guys haven't learned shit, huh?
Yeah, it's just like, I mean, to some extent, like, maybe that's their form of indulgence. I don't know. But I just keep going back to, like, look at all the problems around us. Look at all the fucking real problems. Look at the inequalities of life. It's just like, it's ever present. And, like, why not just everyone go out, like, fuck trying to make Mars work. How about trying to make Earth work?
Exactly.
Like, let's imagine if all the smartest people in the world fix climate.
Yep.
What if all the smartest people in the world solve cancer? What if all the I'm not the smartest person in the world. I'm not even the top 20% of smart people in the world. I'm talking about, like, I know some people who are just so insanely intelligent, but they're doing work that's just going to vanish because it's a current trend. It's not permanent. And I just think that, like, that's a really unpopular thing to say as someone who I left Shopify because I'm like, life can't just be about me building Facebook ads. This can't be it. And I left millions of dollars. I left millions of dollars of Shopify stock because I just felt like it could not be it. And so unpopular opinion, but it breaks my heart to see so many people working on so many stupid things.
Yeah. No, I concur in that sense, and that's what makes you an inevitable special guy, and I appreciate you. Thank you so much for your time today, Michael.
Thank you, Pedro. I appreciate it, brother.
It was wonderful, and for those that listen until now, minute 56, we appreciate you, and where you can subscribe and like and help us train the algorithms. We appreciate that as well, and thank you. Up until another episode.